Hello, I am Sue.Clark.Wittenberg from Ottawa, Canada. This is part 2 of the Sue Clark story about my life. We had finished off in part 1 about my mother threatening to throw me off the balcony at 158 MacArthur Road in Vanier. So anyhow, I'll tell you, in March of 1973, I was 16 going on 17, and I ran away from home. So I asked my boyfriend at the time, Egyptian boyfriend, he happened to live in my building. I was on the 17th floor, he was on the 11th floor, if he could drive me to the bus station. Well, he dropped me off and I decided to stay in Ottawa. So I went back to my condo where my parents lived, and I slept on the cold ground outside. It's a bit too cold, so I went to an apartment next door and I slept in the stairwell. Not a good idea, being a young, attractive lady in some run-down stairwell, sleeping there all night. Anyhow, I had about $20 in my pocket, and I took a bus to Montreal. And anyhow, I didn't want to be seen by the police to have an all-points bulletin. So what I did is I stayed in a church for a little bit, and I read the Bible there, or whatever they had, some type of book. And then I went back to Ottawa, and my Egyptian boyfriend picked me up and drove me around, and I said I would be okay. And then he thought of a friend that I could stay with, a friend of his, a lady. And I stayed there for a while. And then after that, I went to a friend of mine, Christine's, to live there at her house with her brother, because her parents were in Florida. When I was in Montreal for the day, I picked up the phone and called the police, the operator. And I told the police in Ottawa that I was okay. They asked me where I was, and I hung up because I didn't want them to trace the call. I was a mini sleuth then, I guess. Anyhow, hung up the phone. I said, tell my folks. I gave them the number. I'm okay. I'll talk to them soon, and I did. So anyhow, I had missed a lot of school at the Sir Wilfrid Laurier High School in Vanier, Ontario. That's a suburb of Ottawa, a suburb. So I went to high school one day, and anyhow the teacher approached me and said, the office wants to see you, Suzanne. I said, okay. So as soon as I went to the office, the lady said, come with me. She said that I'm the school psychologist. I said, okay. Now I can't recall her name. It's too many years ago. Anyhow, she said, Suzanne, I want to know why. Like you missed a few months of school. I told her I ran away. I don't live with my parents, but I'm in good hands with friends. And I was talking very quickly. I was very hyper because I wasn't sleeping well, I wasn't eating well, and I wasn't going to school. So she said, I'm going to send you somewhere today, and I want you to go. I want you to go to the Royal Ottawa Hospital on Carling Avenue in Ottawa to see someone to talk about your problems. I told the psychologist I was being abused at home, etc. My dad was a wife beater, etc., and my mom would beat my brother. Anyhow, so I did. I took a bus, went down to Carling Avenue. I went to the ROH, Royal Ottawa Hospital, abbreviation ROH, and I went to emergency, and I said, my name is Suzanne Legare, Legare, a French name. They said, oh yes, we are expecting you, Suzanne. So I went to an office with a doctor. He had some type of accent, Spanish or something, and a nurse. The psychiatrist I was talking to was Dr. Arboleda Flores. He's in Kingston, Ontario right now. Anyhow, I was thin, about 125 pounds. He was about 40. Nice looking man, good looking. He was a Spaniard. Anyhow, so what happened, he said, tell me what's going on, Suzanne. I told him, I left home a few months ago. I'm 16. My mother beats me. My father beats my mother beats me and my brother. My nerves are shot. He said, well, Suzanne, come into the hospital and take a little rest. Well, I had no options, I had no money, and I didn't know like about social services because my father was well off, and I had nowhere to go, basically. I said, okay. So the nurse brought me up to the Whitney building. See, the ROH at that time, I was in the Carmichael building, and emergency was there. And then we went through some tunnel, a big, ugly-looking tunnel. Ugly, like it had big pipes on top, water dripping. Went to an elevator up 1, 2, 3, 4, and I got off the elevator, and then, I mean, there's only one elevator, and the doors closed, okay? So there was a round desk right around the corner with nurses, with then they wore the white hats, you know, the white pants, a white skirt or whatever. Hello, Suzanne, this is Whitney 4 ward. I said, okay. So I went in, and they said, well, you're going to stay a few days. I said, yeah, I have no choice. I have nowhere to go. I'm basically homeless, eh? So anyhow, I went to see a doctor that afternoon. They put me in a little bedroom with a little bed. And there were about 20 rooms, and at one end, okay, they had the recreation room, the TV room, etc. And on the other end, they had a self-contained little cafeteria with a few tables to have your meals. Anyhow, I went into the office to see the ward psychiatrist. I can't recall his name now. He asked me all these personal questions. My health, my boyfriend, my mother, my brother, you know, all that. How's your health? I was 125 pounds and that. So he said, okay, well, you're on the board, and we're going to give you some pills. I said, why? What type of pills? Oh, just to calm me down. I said, I don't want any type of pills. And he said, you can't go out for a walk, and you cannot leave the building. I said, why? He said, we have to determine whether you are okay enough to be able to go outside by yourself. I said, well, I got here on my own. Why can I not leave when I want and go for a walk? Or I want to go down to Westgate Shopping Center. He said, you're not allowed. You're now not voluntary. You are now committed. I said, committed for what? So, well, if we want to, if we want to ascertain whether you have a mental illness or not, and put you on pills. So what do you mean mental illness? I said, there's nothing wrong with me. He said, goodbye. He said, the ward psychiatrist said, goodbye. Go back to your room or do whatever. I said, okay, whatever. So I went up to the desk where the nurses were, with the charts and that. I said, what type of pills are you? I said, I hear that you're going to give me some type of pills, nurse. Yeah, something very mild. I said, I have to? Yes. She said, you're being forced to have these medications. I said, I was never on medication in my life. I might have had a cough drop in my life, and that's about it. So anyhow, supper came around, I went down to the end of the hallway, and we lined up with a short little self-contained cafeteria style. You just say, yes, I want that. Yes, I want the meat, the potatoes, whatever. Then you get juice or milk or coffee, eh? I said hello to some people. I'm Sue. Hi. Some look pretty heavily drugged, like they were not drunk, but drugged up. Some had, some of them were not thin. They were young, but not too thin. I guess they gained weight from the meds. I don't know. Anyhow, so I got my pills morning, noon, and night. Morning, noon, supper, and nighttime. I started feeling a bit groggy, very heavily drugged. I said, what is this? I was slurring my speech. I couldn't walk properly. I was uncoordinated. I was thirsty. At one point, I asked a nurse, I need toothpicks to open my eyes. I slept for 20 hours a day. I snored too much, and my roommate said, get her out of here, so I had a private room. And I slept 20 hours a day. A friend came to see me. My boyfriend did not, but my friend came to see me. He said, you're sleeping a lot and you're gaining weight. Well, I stayed there 3 months. I was not very happy. And at one point, the nurse said, sign this paper. I said, I can't even see. I said, my eyes are all blurry. Oh, don't worry. It's about the medication. Don't worry about it. Just sign it, and we'll talk about it later. I said, okay. I was so drugged up, I didn't even know if I was coming and going. So then I was let go to go home. And I went back to my parents, not a very good idea because my parents are my abusers. So for the year and a half, I go into the Royal, go back to my parents' condo, go in for a few weeks, come out, come in, come out, take the meds out, go back in, I'm depressed. I mean, it was no wonder I was depressed. I was living with my abusers, my parents. So anyhow, I went there in March of the next year, 1973, and they kept, and the hospital staff kept warning me, if you say you're suicidal too many times, or you act out too much, we've been giving you a lot of these needles in your hip to shut you up. They're called chemical restraints. I used to yell, I'm not crazy, go see my mother, you so-and-sos, and I won't use the language here. I wasn't compliant. I said, I don't want your damn medications. I'm not crazy, I'm not a schizo, whatever you call me. You see, the first time I was in the hospital, the nurses late at night would go into this room and they would shut the door halfway. The charts were right around the corner, so I crawled up, grabbed my chart, and it said, Suzanne Legary is schizophrenic. Her parents came in to visit, and they said, we did not abuse Suzanne. They lied. So I said, uh-oh, my parents lied there. Not good, not good. And my mother used to come to the ward and get all hyper. How's Suzanne? How's she doing? I want to see my daughter. Like, very hyper. And they thought, whoa, there's something wrong with her, eh? So anyhow, I went in and out. And what happened then was, one day, I was on the ward, Whitney 4, again, on the lock ward. I had no privileges. I couldn't go out. I couldn't go with a nurse for a walk. I couldn't go out by myself. I couldn't leave for the weekend or nothing. So this is what happened. I said, oh, to hell with this. I'm sick and tired of being here. If I can't get out, I want to kill myself right here. So the recreation room at the end of the ward had this macrame stuff, the real thick cord. So I cut some. I asked for scissors, and nobody was looking, and I cut a big piece, the stuff that you make the macrame hangings there, where you put planters in and that. So I went to my room, I took it around, I took the cord around my neck real tight, put it on the back of the door. It has, these things that hang out like a V at the top of the door. I put it, and I was going to step on a chair, and a nurse said, Suzanne, come for lunch. She opened the door and saw me trying to hang myself. So that there was a major emergency on the ward. They put me in my bed, gave me a chemical restraint to put me out, to sedate me. I had the 24-hour supervision at the door. They had someone always watching me. If I went to the washroom, I slept for about 12 hours, and then when I woke up, they would follow you to the washroom. If you had a bath, they'd watch. If you went down the hallway, they'd watch you. When you're sleeping, they'd watch you. In other words, it was like a staff from my bodyguards for about, 72 hours. They'd have a chair outside my bedroom, and I could not go anywhere without them. They were right at the door. The door was open halfway because of the lights in the hallways at night. So that happened. So then, about a week later, the ward psychiatrist came and said, come with me into your office. Come with me into your office. I did. Said, Suzanne, you're very depressed, you're suicidal, and we can't handle you. So we've decided to send you to Brockvile Psychiatric Hospital, which is 60 miles away from Ottawa. I said, I don't want to go. He said, you're going. So the next day, I got together my few clothes and purse and, my hat, my sunglasses and all that. And it was March of 1973, and I went into the back of the ambulance, and a man was sitting there, ambulance guy, and we were talking. It took 1 hour to get to the big hospital. BPH, as I call it, Brockvile Psychiatric Hospital, was a huge hospital. Big grounds, a large fence all around, maybe 10 big buildings, and the ambulance stopped and said, Suzanne, this is where we drop you off. So they came with me, took my little box of belongings, and went into the building that had Ward H, a current ward. So they took me up the elevator, and it was another locked ward. They knocked on the door and said, here's Suzanne Legary from ROH, Royal Ottawa Hospital from Ottawa. she's been transferred here. So a nurse said, come with me, please. So we went downstairs. She unlocked the door, let me downstairs, and there's a little office there. And then she said, goodbye, Mr. Ambulance people, goodbye. And I said, oh my goodness, here alone in this building? Oh, jeez, I was scared. I was really scared. Here I am. I'm not 17 yet. I'm 16, going on 17 April. And she said to me, Miss Legare. I said, call me Sue. Suzanne? I said, no. I said, my nickname is Sue. Okay. She said, now, show me that box. I said, why? We have to look to see if you have something in there that you could hurt yourself with. I said, I'm not here because I try to hurt myself. I try to hang myself. Well, she said, that's what we're talking about. You tried suicide by some other means. We have to look in the box to see whether you have scissors or razor blades or something. I said, I don't have scissors. I don't have razor blades. She says, I have to look. It's part of my job. I said, okay. I had a ring on my finger from my boyfriend, a little friendship ring. She says, I want that ring off. I said, why? She says, I want it. I said, no, I'm not taking it off. And I was persistent. She said, okay, keep it on. And now she says, come with me. Where? Down to the basement. Why? We went down the elevator. She said, come with me. So I walked down this hallway. It had a yellow strip of paint in the middle of this hallway floor. It was very odd. She knocks on a door. I have to stand on I go up one stair, and there's a photographer. He's all set up, you know, with the camera and all that. I said, why am I here? She says, we want to take a photograph of you in case you escape. We can tell the police and show your picture what you look like. I said, I'm not going to escape. She says, many people do because they don't like it here. I kept my mouth shut because I knew I wouldn't like it there. And then I went back onto the ward, and they had one side was for the women, and they had half walls, like the walls were in half, and curtains from the ceiling to half of the wall. And I shared this little room with another person called Louise. And the other lady next door to us was Joanne. Anyhow, so at the end of the hallway was a TV room, and people could smoke at that time, full of smoke in there. And then, right next to it was a big room with a locked door for the cafeteria. So I went to the cafeteria, and one night at dinner, there was one steel knife missing. People used to, it was like a cafeteria. You get your food, you sit down, then you clear, and then somebody would take your plate and clear off, like, you know, okay, like the rest of the food on your plate. So we had to be searched, body searched, and what happened was the guy that was cleaning the dishes dropped the knife in the garbage can by mistake. Anyhow, but they locked us in when we ate. Very bizarre, very horrible. Then came time to have a shower twice a week. And then next door was a little room with a bathtub. She said, okay, Suzanne, and they put a bunch of these thing on wheels, like, curtains on wheels to, like it was outside the shower room. And she said, take your clothes off, girls. I said, what, take my clothes off in front of everybody? She said, it's quicker, line up, and all my peers were naked. All of them were naked, and the staff were right there, and the shower stalls had no curtains. It was so embarrassing because I gained 30 pounds. I was about 160 pounds. It was so embarrassing. There you are standing stark naked in a line in front of your peers, in front of the staff. It was so terrible. I said, I want to take a bath. They said, no, we can't do that. Twice a week I was humiliated. Terrible. I think it's a part of the power and control there. Anyhow. And what happened was one night, the nurse came in and had to call some of the male nurses because my roommate, Louise, had a habit of swallowing toothbrushes. They had to take her to the hospital quite a few times. And then what happened was we had a new psychiatric patient come onto our ward called Jed. Excuse me. He was a tall guy, heavy-set guy with, he had jeans with braces on, the suspenders on. Nice-looking guy, young guy, about 20 or so. A few weeks later, I was going down the basement to do the some leather work, like a part of the like the occupational therapy. And the one who was the occupational therapist said on the elevator going down, "Oh, horrible thing happened this morning. Jed, your new peer? Well, we found him on the train track right outside the hospital. Okay, they had a train track, and he killed himself. He jumped in front of the train." Terrible. I was pretty depressed about that. So anyhow, I was there for about 2 months on Ward H when Dr. Louis Sipos, S-I-P-O-S, said, "Suzanne, come into my office here. You're still suicidal? You're still depressed?" I said, "Yeah." So, "Well, we have a treatment that might work on you." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "It's called electroshock, shock therapy." "What is that?" "Well, we put electricity through your brain." I said, "What, electricity through my brain?" "Oh, it's not that harmful. It won't hurt you at all. We just put you on a bed and just zap your brain, and that's it." I said, "What?" I said, "I don't want that at all. I don't want that at all." I said, "It's going to be like frying my brain like an egg. I don't want it." He said, "Sorry, but you're forced to do it." I said, "Oh, no, this is going to be horrible." I was horrified. I told a few of my peers, they said, "It's an awful thing." And Joan, my peer next door, said, "I had 100 of them. I can't remember a thing." And I used to talk to her. She would say one sentence. I said, "What?" She could only recall half a sentence at a time. I said, "Oh no, this is terrible." So anyhow, the morning came for my first electroshock. That electroshock is called ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, shock and shock therapy. I said, "I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I'm not going." And anyhow, she called some of the orderlies, and they had to drag me into the room down the hallway. And years later, a peer of mine called Jean told me in Ottawa, when they were dragging you into the room, you were kicking, screaming, and biting them. I'm not a violent person. So they put me in a room with white walls, white sheet on the bed, and there's a big machine to my left with wires and that. And they said, "Lay down on your back." They gave me some type of needle. I guess it was to sedate me. Because years ago, okay, they used to give electroshock to people with no sedation, and then during the seizure, people would jump up and break their backs. A friend of mine, Carol, her sister had electroshock in Toronto at a psych ward, and when she had the electroshock, she jumped up and broke her back. So anyhow, I said, "I don't want this, I don't want this, help me, help me, help me." And nobody helped me. I yelled as I was going into the room, and nobody helped me. I said, "God, somebody help me, get me out of this torture chamber." Nobody did. Anyhow, I'm on my back. They put a rubber band around my head, and then they put 2 wires on my temples, and they said, "Now we're going to do it." I said, "No," I was screaming, "I don't want it." And then, of course, I fell asleep there with the sedation, and I woke up, and a peer told me later on the ward, "Suzanne, as soon as we're finished your electroshock, they rolled you out and put you into a wheelchair." "A wheelchair?" "Yeah." And you said, "Who am I? Where am I? Where the heck am I? Where am I? Where am I?" So I missed my breakfast that morning, and I had electroshock. Now, they were supposed to give me a series, like 20 in about 2 weeks. On my 5th electroshock, I went in, and I came out in a wheelchair. And the next week, the nurse said, "We're not going to give you any more electroshocks, Suzanne." I said, "Oh, thank God, I don't want them." She said, "Because your heart stopped on your last electroshock, and we had to revive you." I said, "Oh my God." I said, "You tried to kill me." So anyhow, I was there for another 2 months, and then my parents went in to visit the doctor on the ward, Dr. Sipos, and he told me he didn't like my mother or my father, and that he was going to release me from the hospital with medication, and I was going to go to a halfway house for women who are psychiatric survivors in Ottawa on Cathcart Street, and I did. Sister Irene, a nun, ran this facility. I didn't like all the rules, so I left, and I went to my aunt's house, Aunt Olive, my mother's sister's house, in the west end of Ottawa. Okay? So, anyhow, that's part 2, folks. And I just want to tell you about Brockvile Psychiatric Hospital is still there. When I was there, I had two men that put me right under their wing. There was a young guy, about 20. He came from the K ward, apparently, and was transferred to H. I didn't know what, okay, the word meant forensic. But I guess it was a crime he did. I don't know. When I came on the ward, he said, listen to me. He said, when I go out, you come with me. I said, why? He says, just to go with you. I didn't know that when he saw people, he gave them the eye, don't touch her. And I didn't understand. But he was kind and gentle, and he told me, Suzanne, play the game, Sue. There's a game we play to get off the ward and get out of the hospital. Pretend you're okay. Oh, no, doctor, I'm not depressed. Oh, no, I feel fine now. Lie to get out. Fake it. Lie to get out. A lot of us knew this game, okay? So anyhow, that's what I did, and I got out, and I went to Ottawa. But I didn't realize till years later why he used to follow me around when I went out. Because in the tunnels, some of the staff were having sex with the patients in these bathrooms in the tunnels. He knew that. He didn't want to tell me, so every time I went somewhere, he followed me. And if he wasn't with me, people knew, leave her alone. The body language he gave them was, leave this one alone. So this man, I forgot his name. I wish I knew his name. I forgot with the electroshock. But he saved me from sexual abuse on the ward and like any other type of abuse, physical abuse. Okay, part 3 is coming up. Thanks for listening. And if you want to reach me by email, I will put on the video, on the video details. Bye. Thank you.